Welcome to the American Med Spa Association podcast, Medical Spa Insider. This week, AmSpa President and CSO Cathy Christensen is speaking with Kendra Bracken-Ferguson, founder of the BrainTrust.
Refresh your body, mind, and career journey at the Women in Aesthetics Leadership Conference being held October 3rd through the 5th at California's beautiful Terranea Resort. Walk is more than just another convention. It's an immersive retreat that combines education and networking with rejuvenation. For women aesthetic professionals who dedicate their time to the health and happiness of others, this is the opportunity to get away and focus on your own wellness. Reconnect to your passions and return with bold new inspiration for your business. Walk celebrates the med spa industry's opportunities for female empowerment and entrepreneurship, including the ceremony for the 2025 Distinguished Women Awards. Find out more and register at experiencewalk.com. That's experiencewalc.com. And as a Medical Spa Insider listener, you can receive 10% off your registration if you use the promo code WALC10. That's WALC10.
Promo code valid for inclusive registration until September 11, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or standard registration until October 3rd, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Promo code only applies to the primary registrant and cannot be combined with any additional offers.
Welcome to Medical Spa Insider. My name is Cathy Christensen. I'm the President and Chief Strategy Officer for the American Med Spa Association. And I'm so excited with our guest today, Kendra Bracken-Ferguson from the BrainTrust. I have just recently gotten a chance to know Kendra, and she is exceptional, an exceptional human being. And I'm really excited to introduce you to her as well. I got to know Kendra she will actually be speaking at our Women in Aesthetics Leadership Conference, October 3rd through the 5th. But I want you to get to know her too, because she's incredible. First of all, welcome to the show, Kendra.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. I cannot wait for the conference, and I can't wait to dive into everything.
All right. Well, I was just telling Kendra, I've been doing this for, a few years. I'm only like in my 20s, so it's only been a few years that I've been doing this. But generally speaking, when you get a nice long bio, some of it is a little fluffy. Not Kendra's. Kendra's bio is like solid money the whole way. And then she's got several other things that she's working on as well. But I want you to understand who we're dealing with here. Kendra Bracken-Ferguson is an incredible human. She's the former CEO of Carmel Corporation and the founder of BrainTrust, which encompasses the BrainTrust Agency, which is a digital marketing and brand development consultancy. The BrainTrust Founder Studio is one of the largest membership-based platforms for inclusive founders in beauty and wellness. And the BrainTrust Fund One, a traditional $15 million, am I right on that?
Yes.
$15 million venture fund. Kendra has the distinction of being one of the first 100 Black women who have raised over $1 million in investment for her first company. She's a transformative brand builder, visionary leader, and has a proven secret ingredient to guiding and monetizing more than 200 influencer-driven brands, which have collectively generated more than $100 million in revenue. She's also a best-selling author with her debut book, The Beauty of Success, Start, Grow, and Accelerate Your Brand. Became the #1 new release in business entrepreneurship on Amazon. We're not done yet, by the way. She's done all of those amazing things. Before she started on her entrepreneurial journey, Kendra was a member of fashion designer Ralph Lauren's team, responsible for helping to establish the brand's social media footprint as the company's first director of digital media. She's done a million other things. She took a leap of faith and created Digital Brand Architects in 2010 alongside Karen Rabinovitz. DBA was the first American blogger management company. And now Kendra is focusing on a million different things. The BrainTrust Founder Studio, the BrainTrust Fund One were born. BrainTrust is a brand development and social media agency that drives brand strategy and online media presence for talent and global brands. Clients have included Kelly Ripa Home, Dear Drew by Drew Barrymore, Under Armour, Sally Beauty, you name it. And then on top of it, Kendra has endowed a communication scholarship at her alma mater, Purdue, which, by the way, that was my dad's alma mater too. Kendra's scholarship is for Black female freshman students to help increase the number of Black students at the university. She's the co-founder of Beauty United, a nonprofit focused on diversifying the beauty and wellness industry. She sits on the board of Blushington GMB and Caton Children's Museum, as well as the Amazon Black Business Accelerator Advisory Council. She's a member of Deal Make Hers and Female Founders Collective. She's the host of Business and the Beat, a beauty and wellness podcast, season 5, launching in 2 weeks. Just so you know, it's June 11th today, so it's launching in 2 weeks. That podcast focuses on diversifying beauty and wellness industry, highlighting multicultural founders and senior executives. And she's won many awards. She was named as one of Essence Magazine's 17 Inspiring Black Executives Redefining the Face of Beauty in 2020, and many, many others as well. And she resides happily with her family, including a daughter, a husband, an English bulldog, and a turtle. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Turtle. He's 25 years old.
I was going to say, I think that turtle's going to be with you for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I am just in awe of everything that you've done. I know you have a number of other things on the docket for you as well. But what I really, really want to know is you seem like a person who's always looking for the next step in your journey. And you're not it doesn't seem like you're resting on your laurels. It seems like you're excited and growing and ambitious. And how do you do that every day? How do you look for the right opportunity and decide when to actually go for it?
Oh my gosh, that is an excellent question. And thank you. I don't know how you got through that.
I don't know. I need some water. I need to rest.
Well, and it's funny because I noticed I'm drinking this tea with 2 matcha green teas. I was like, oh, subconsciously, you decided you needed to have 2 at one time.
Well, I'm going to say that's a lot of water in that cup. So you do what you need to do.
Exactly. I was like, that's what keeps me going. So it's so funny because when I started my career at Fleischman Hillard, I was one of those people in 6th grade. I was like, I want to do PR. I want to go to school for PR. And I actually did. I went to Purdue for PR. And then I said I wanted to work for one of the top 5 PR agencies in the world. And at the time, Fleischman Hillard was number 1. So I got my internship there. I ended up getting offered a job there as soon as I graduated, moved to New York, didn't know anyone. That's why I have Mr. Turtle, who I got in 2020. But one of the interesting things is I remember I volunteered for everything. If there was a new business pitch, if there was a new club, I was in the mom's club before I was a mom. And I loved being part of it. And when I did my review, my first boss said, you're doing so many things. You're always popping around. Don't you want to stay with one team and only do that and finish it to the end? And I've thought about that clearly. I've got PTSD because it's 20-something years later. But I always thought about that. And as I grew in my career, I realized that I'm a builder. I'm an architect. I love helping brands grow and start and evolve. And what I had to really reconcile with myself and years of working with my executive coach, shout out Julie Flanders, was that it's okay. It's okay for me to start something and not have to see it 20 years later all the way down to the end. But I also have to balance that. And the balance comes from, if you know that you love starting things and getting into it, you have to make sure that it's taken care of. So you may not be the one. Take, for example, Digital Brand Architects, the first company I started. Amazing. That was the first time I had raised money. It was the first time, we were one of the first companies to represent bloggers. The company sold to UTA. And we ended up bringing in a third partner. And I knew I loved building this, but I knew I wanted to move on. And thinking about, can you create something? Can you lead something? Can you guide something? And then get to a point where you feel like you've done enough. And so I have been able to, in my career, be really excited and proud that the things that I built are still going. DBA is still with UTA, like Fleischman, Ralph Lauren, all these things have just grown bigger and better since I was there. But I get to say that I had a piece of that, and I get to rest assured that the impact, my contribution meant something. And so as I look at the things that I'm building, I always align it back to my 4 pillars: community, mentorship, education, and capital. And if what I'm building, doing, or lending my name to enables my pillars to come to life and for me to be the truest of who I am, then I'm like, sign me up.
It sounds like you've had a lot of introspection on it and kind of guided introspection, but that's really amazing and cool to be able to say, this is where my kind of genius lives. I have a love-hate relationship with that phrase, but this is where my genius lives. This is where I'm happiest. This is probably, you made the assumption, this is where I do my best work, is when I'm launching something. How do you get there? Because I think it's a very interesting thing to say, I have done my best work. It is time for me to go do this somewhere else. And I feel totally okay with it, as opposed to feeling like a certain responsibility to continue that to the very end. How do you make that break?
Oh my goodness. Sometimes I've done it well, and sometimes I haven't done it so well. This is so funny because in the car this morning, I was actually thinking about that same thing. And I was like, when I was younger, I didn't break too well. I'm still trying to, be 45 and all the things that I've learned, but it's really interesting. And one thing that you said and all connected is like this zone of genius. I used to do a talk. I do a lot of public speaking about finding your zone of genius. And it's an interesting love-hate thing, because I think that your zone of genius gets greater, but it also shifts. And so we also have to be very clear and self-actualize with ourselves of what that is. And then we also have to know that sometimes we don't always get to live there. So for example, when we talk about building and knowing how to let go of something, like I love living there, but with that comes setting up a proper LLC, having the right lawyer, filing your taxes, like looking at the business structure. And some of those things you have to do if you're going to be a builder. You don't have to live in it. That's not my zone of genius, but I know that I have to be acutely aware of what's going on because of past mistakes, but that's how you are able to keep going. Now, what happens for me, and this is the good question, like, when do you know that it's time? And it's interesting because in my book, The Beauty of Success, Start, Grow, and Accelerate Your Brand, chapter 6 is really about know when to pivot to thrive and survive. And when I think about, even digital brand architects starting that, I remember after we raised money, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be sitting in boardrooms and it's going to be amazing. And it wasn't that. And I had a dear friend and she came over to my house and I was like, something isn't right. I just don't know. And it's not about it not going the way I had planned. I just am not excited. And she said, it's okay to outgrow something and it's okay to leave something that you started. And so I sat in my office and I was thinking about it and I wrote on my whiteboard, like, okay, what do you love? And it was like, I love being around smart people. I love being in community. And I wrote brain. And then the second thing going through that experience was really showing up with integrity. I had left New York, moved to LA, was around a whole new group of people. And I realized I'm also from Texas. So
okay, you've been up here. You're so, like on the coast.
I am like shocked when people say they are going to do something and then they don't do it. They say things that may not necessarily be true. So I remember sitting there and thinking about integrity and what it means in business and how do you stay true to yourself, to your faith, to what you believe. And so I wrote BrainTrust on my whiteboard. And of course, that became the name of my next 3 companies. But it was really this moment of, I only want to be in business with people that I trust, where we can collaborate and we can get things done. And so I've used that kind of along with my pillars is, when do you know it's time to walk away? And it's not always easy. One of the hardest things that's happening now is I worked with Halle Berry for 6 years. We built a company called Respin. You can Google it now, and it's this fantastic menopause brand that she built. When we were doing it as partners, we were looking at wellness and we had fitness products and we were doing all these things. And I remember loved working with her. I helped her launch her social. We did a lot. But then there was a moment where I wanted to start my own company again. And having to say to someone who you admire, who is just brilliant, like, I actually want to go do my own thing. And so you look at the bittersweet moments where I'm so proud of, like, that's what it was. But then I'm also like, oh my gosh, I started that. Like, but then on the other side, it was time and it wouldn't have been the same thing. And I needed to start new projects and I needed to evolve and I needed to grow. One last example, even with BrainTrust, when I started BrainTrust as an agency, it was such a different time to be in the agency space. I grew up at Fleishman-Hillard. It was what I knew. And then I said, you know what? I see this need in 2020 of everything that was happening with COVID. So many of my beauty founder friends were losing so much. I was a shareholder in BeautyCon. And I reached out to my beauty friends and I said, I want to create a community where we can help with mentorship and education and capital and all these things. And we launched BrainTrust Founders Studio as a for-profit company. This year, we have actually shifted from a for-profit company into a nonprofit because we're also struggling with things that are happening in the world that we can't control. And so I had to think about what's more important to me, helping this group of founders that we know and love versus the way an entity is set up. We lost so many corporate partners, like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in a week. But I knew that the work was so important. And so I had to let go of what I thought it was going to be and move into something new, as well as figure out, like, what else are you starting to continue to help the founders in the industry that you love?
Yeah, that was
a lot. Sorry, that was a lot.
No. But I think the common thread for me, just kind of in awe of you and looking at what you've done and knowing where I personally struggle, and probably a lot of people do, is that what you're doing is very courageous. Like you seem from the outside, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you have a lot of courage and you have a lot of confidence to make that next step. Because what you're talking about isn't easy to do. There's a lot that goes into launching your own endeavor. There's a lot, emotionally, like you said, with Holly Berry or other partners that you've used where you say, I'm moving on, and that's an uncomfortable. I'm sure that's not a super easy conversation to have, but you're making them. Obviously are believing in yourself. Have the courage to do your next thing. Where does that come from? And do you have any tips for women to take that next step? I mean, even the idea that you pivot, like, a lot of people, had they had that bad of a week, losing that much money and that many companies, would be shell-shocked. There's a certain level of, I don't know how to move forward because this is such a huge thing that I have to figure out. And it seems to me like you're quite nimble in making those decisions. So do you have any tips or insight into how you can do that better, how people can pivot better, or in a more courageous way?
So thank you for that. I try, and there's a few things that I always think about. I remember growing up with my mom, it was always like, we had to be ready. I'm an only child. At times my mom was a single mom. At times she was married, but we always were moving. I traveled with her on business trips. And when things were hard, it was like, you literally have one day to cry. You have one day, cry it out. You need to stay in the bed, get yourself together, but life is moving around you and you have to keep going. And everything is very much rooted in faith and prayer. I am a strong believer in God. I am very spirit-led. And it's interesting with confidence because I'm always just praying for faith. Every time I step out, it has to be on faith. I always am constantly turning fear into faith. I have to pray and meditate every morning. Before we got on the show, I was just saying I was getting a facial. I started crying. I was like, I'm tired. There's so much. So I do think that we have to have the moment where we're looking at something and where we analyze. I do a lot of writing. What happened in this situation? What am I accountable for? What can I improve? What am I proud of? What am I grateful for? And every morning I have to do that because it's not as though it's not scary, but it's more about, I know that I am protected in faith. I always pray for barriers of protection around me, around my family, around my businesses. And the thing that I'm always also, for me, I really like working in community. I named my company BrainTrust for a reason. So every collaboration, every partnership that I have, I'm constantly like, who is going to be the person where we can come together and where we can get it done? And so I'm at certain times I'm compartmentalizing, like I'm own a few different businesses right now with different partners. And I always try and find the through line of connectivity that comes back to me so that I can hold my center, I can hold my space. But I'm also managing the different people because I know that each one has something special that for that project we're working on is going to help me. And I've talked to a lot of business owners. Like I've been the CEO of a publicly traded company. I have been an entrepreneur. I've also been a junior employee. And even when we start thinking about Walk and the conference, like the session that I'm working on is finding your brain trust, honing and owning. And who is your brain trust? Who is your community? Because confidence comes when we know that we are solid in who we are. We have the right brain trust or group of people around us who are going to support us, call us out, but who also have our back. And then when we're very solid in doing something that we're passionate about, like literally, I was working on something that I wanted to launch, and my executive coach, she said, it just doesn't sound like you. It sounds very transactional. And she said, so you're checking your pillars. I have a whole grid that my team created that we run everything through to make sure it fits. And she's like, but there's no joy. And she said, so you have to, you're so spirit-led and you're light and you're led by joy. And she's like, don't let the transactional piece of things that have happened in the past or where you see yourself going get in the way of you saying no to something that you shouldn't be doing. Yes to something that you should. But you have to figure out what is going to be your center. If it's going to be prayer, let it be prayer. If it's going to be yoga, if it's going to be cooking. But I think that we have to think of it as it's really survival. It can't just be put in a bucket of self-care. I'm going to get to it when I need to. Because we can't be ourselves. We can't be confident if we haven't taken the time to ground and root ourselves in what it is and where it comes from. And then what's our source for it.
That's really, really wise. It's interesting because I'm having conversations with friends, with myself, kind of constantly right now. I'm going to be 46 next week. So we're kind of in the same, we're like Gen X. We're Gen Xers who are still trying to figure it out. But I think that's absolutely true. Like I don't know about you, but retirement is not like around the corner for me. I don't even know if I will ever do that, but it's like, this is a big part. Your career is a big part of your life, and you can compartmentalize it so much, but there's a certain point where you have to find joy in what you're doing. And I think you're right. The definition of like what brings that for me is really, really important. It sounds like you,
something I would add to that is one of the things is like, what would you say yes to? And it was interesting because when I was talking to my executive coach and I was going through the things, and she's like, do you even know what you would say yes to right now? And in my head, I thought I did. But then I realized throughout the week, people were asking me to do all kinds of things. And I was like, I'm not saying yes to that. Not saying yes to that. And so it did bring me back to such an interesting place because should things go as we would hope, we have a long life ahead of us. Like talking about FOMO, we're talking about long lives ahead of us, being healthy, keeping our mental health strong, being sane. And so we have to do things that are going to fuel that because we can't outrun stress. That is just, everyone's going to have it. So it's less about outrunning it and more, how do we manage it? How do we keep it under check so that it doesn't impact our wellness? Because that's how we get to not retire. That's how we get to keep doing the things that we love. And when we're stuck and we're in these places that don't bring us joy, that don't match our purpose, it's taking years off of our life.
100%. Well, and also like gatekeeping yourself too. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're doing, or your wellness or your mental capacity. There's a certain level. It's funny because as I get older, I'm like, I used to think 45, 46 was old, like old. Like, and it is, I don't know about you, but I still feel like the same person as I did when I was 18. But I think the maturing part of it comes in when you're like, you know what, you have control about how you handle something or how you respond to something or how you like, there's a point. And I do you know Jane Werwind from Dermalogica? I don't know. She's actually speaking at Walk too, which is really, really cool. But I knew her from another career before this one. And one of the things when I had interviewed her probably 20 years ago, she said, you should never feel like you can't say, I need a day to think about something. Like you should never feel bad about giving yourself a pause to really figure out the right answer. And I think a lot of women especially women in business feel like they have to make a decision right away and, damn the consequences. But I don't know. I think that's really interesting what you're saying about like really being mindful of what you're allowing into your universe and what you're not.
Well, and I think it's so interesting because I agree with you. I think it comes with time and age. And it goes back to what I was saying, like decisions, the way I handle things, like it's the level of maturity and understanding and realizing that we have control as much as we have control, right?
Yes.
As much as we can kind of maintain our space. So that means that we can sleep, we can schedule time to work out, we can pray and meditate. Like we can also control how we handle things. And I think, some of the lessons that I've learned, especially being a leader, because at the end of the day, as much as we have our team and I love to collaborate, like when it's your name on the line, when you're the CEO or when you're the director, when you're this, and you have to make a decision. And so allowing ourselves, I love that, like a moment to pause, not feeling like you're sitting at the table and you have to know every single thing right then. And I think when you're younger, you do feel like that because we're constantly trying to prove. And even now, it's like, I've done all of these things. I know who to call. I have great experience. And let me take a second. I think some of the biggest leaps that I have made that worked out in the end, because I don't believe in failure. I actually, that's a whole other podcast. I do not believe that we ever fail.
Okay.
I believe that it's always a stepping stone and it's always a learning. Because I don't think that anything happens accidentally. As people, we get to choose, right? But with every choice we make, there is going to be an outcome, whether good, bad, ugly, positive, there will be an outcome because you're choosing to do something. And so I think that in moments where I've rushed to make a decision, the outcome may not have been great. And I said, oh, I wish I had taken another week. I could have analyzed it more. But it wasn't a failure. It just opened up a door for something else, or it gave me a new experience, or it gave me a new learning, or, even going into Carmel, I was at this place, we were building the company. I had been an entrepreneur for so long, and the opportunity came to me and I was like, be a public company CEO of a beauty brand. And we're going into the spa industry. I'm like, this is great. And I get stuck in all these things. And I had been what I call in my book an entrepreneur before, like building something in a company. And I very much was like, I can do this. And I made the decision very quickly. And to your point, I'm tying up loose ends. I'm making sure everything is great and wonderful. And, in hindsight, I probably should have taken a beat. And not to say that I wouldn't have done it, because I'd been praying and praying and praying to God, like, help me figure out my career. Help me figure out the next step. Help me figure out where to go. And so I believed that opportunity was a blessing because it helped me actually remove some things that I was doing that I couldn't figure out how to just walk up and get out of. So it removed itself. It opened me into a new group of people, new opportunities, new understanding about the market, which is actually helping me now in my new venture. But it was an interesting moment of how fast I leaped, dealing with the outcome of that leap, feeling like, okay, it's now time to leave that leap and start something else. But realizing that no matter what I do, there will always be something that propels me, whether it's fast or slow, into what the next thing is going to be, because I'm not going to allow myself to just sit here. I may take a sabbatical. I may go on social media, which I have for a little bit. My publisher, it's time to come on back in. But I know that that's the beauty of our industry. There's always going to be a new spa. There's going to be a new treatment. There's going to be a new tool, a new product, something that we can get involved with and create and use our brain to just explore.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I think that's true. And it's a really positive outlook. And I'm curious, what's your advice on kind of maintaining that positivity and moving forward. This is, and I'm experiencing this, but I'm seeing it in my teams as well. It's a rough time, to be an American. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world. How do you, without losing complete touch with the world, how do you surround yourself with the positivity and with, kind of staying out of the negativity in order to approach your days and your careers and your choices that way? Like, do you have a certain kind of person that you're spending time with? Do you have a certain kind of like, it sounds to me like you have a kind of a structure where in the mornings or in the evenings, you're kind of writing down the things that, like you said, what I'm grateful for, the challenges that I have. How are you maintaining that positivity?
Oh goodness. I like there is so much happening. Um, I feel like every single day it is something new. And it's interesting because my dad watches a lot of news, and me and my mom are always like, dude, you gotta turn that off. I have been so one, I'm a positive, glasses full, everything's gonna be okay type of person. I lean into that. That is my superpower. And
Uh-huh.
I always have to tell people, don't mistake my positivity, my kindness for weakness, because I'm
Yes.
aware of what is happening. But I have to choose to live in that space, because the alternative is I'm curled up on my couch and I can't figure out how to function. And I really protect my mornings. I am a huge morning person. I literally, it's 4:30 and I'm like, sleep till 5, sleep till 5. Um, but I have to do that to ground
Mhm.
myself. I get up every morning. I have my green tea, my 8 green tablet, my Dr. Nigma vitamin C, my lemon. And I do take a second to really just pray, meditate, not for 2 hours, for 5 minutes, to just set my thoughts for the day. And that is not to say that I don't wake up and see a crazy email. I don't see the new, I see the news. I've had to tell my husband, like at nighttime, I'm like, sir, I cannot
Sure.
have the news be the last thing before I
Yeah.
go to sleep. And it's hard because we're in the business. I have to know what's going on with tariffs. I'm literally texting
Yes.
my founder right now, like, okay, you're manufacturing here. What's happening with the tariffs? Like, it is happening, and it's here.
Mhm.
Everything that's happening with Target. Like, I'm talking to
Mhm.
one of my founder friends who was the last Black owned skincare brand in Target. So she fought 10 years to get in there. And then someone says one thing, and even though you're selling and you're in all these doors, like, you're being pulled back because you're identified as Black. Like,
Wow.
it's so much that we could go on and on and on and on. And so we have to figure out, based upon what we believe, how do we ensure that no matter what we're doing through our work, that lives on? How do
Mhm.
we ensure that the people that we surround ourselves with live, lives on, that
Mhm.
we're making sure that we can fill up our cup, because it is easy to get bogged down. And I'll be reading the news and I'll be like, oh my gosh. And I'll look at the time and I'll be like, okay, it's long enough. And it'll weigh on me. Like, it'll sit in
Mhm.
my heart, and I
Well,
will just be so sad. And then I have to say, okay, so what are the things that we can change? Like,
yes.
having an endowment at Purdue. I am so grateful that I've worked so hard in my career that I can have an endowment at Purdue University to help another student who looks like me, who went through some of the things I went through to get there. So we have to figure out what is our own moment of give back. And I think the last thing is that we spend so much time talking about changing the world, right? We all want to change the world. We all do. And I think we have to figure out, what does changing the world mean in the community of arm's length of where we are? Because
Mhm.
sometimes, and it goes back to us writing our list of our goals and all the things, and we never diminish our goals and our dreams. But I always say, in this moment in time, what is the one change that you can make that you will feel good about? And it may not impact 15,000 people. It may not change a bill that's being passed, but in the community of which you live, you have made a difference. And we
Mhm.
can all make a difference in the community of which we are, in our businesses, how we treat people, whether
Mhm.
it's being nice at the grocery store or whether it's letting a team member talk about something that they need. And so I think that it's the level of humanity that we have to maintain within ourselves, where we live, that's going to help us in whatever you believe, but it's going to help us move forward.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're absolutely right. The word that really kind of I clung to, like at the beginning of your response, was choose. You use the word choose. Like you have to choose to wake up and protect your time. And, I think it can feel very much like you're kind of being swept away with the
Yes.
tide of things sometimes, even if it's not like the world itself. Maybe it's your business or the business you're working in, or you just feel kind of swept away and out of control. And I think when you say, you have to choose, it is true. Like there's a certain amount of control you have over yourself and how you like succeed and choose success every day. And like you said, even if it's not giant, it could just be, making someone smile, feel better, making yourself feel better, making dinner, eating something nutritious,
Yes.
whatever that is, but have control over that. That's awesome. Well, I know I don't want to take too much more of your time. You have some amazing things. So your podcast is coming out, season 5, in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your podcast. I'm excited to learn about that.
So it's so funny. You mentioned Essence. So we were doing the shoot for the cover of Essence. We were named, the most influential women of beauty. And I met this woman and she called me later and was like, oh my gosh, you should do this podcast. And I was like, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about doing a podcast. She's like, let's do it together. She happened to work for one of the largest retailers in the world. And they were like, well, you can't do this podcast. I, of course, eager bee, positivity, had already signed my contract. So I was locked in and I was like, I'm just going to do this for one season. And I loved it. And we launched at the end of 2020. It's been 181 episodes.
Oh, wow.
I love it. I get to talk to beauty and wellness professionals, executives, influencers, entrepreneurs about their journey. And I'm so thankful to my podcast because my publisher at Wiley was listening to my podcast, reached out and said, have you thought about doing a book?
Okay.
So that led me to my book, The Beauty of Success, Start, Grow, and Accelerate Your Brand. You see the trend. Everything is about helping founders grow. And so that's the podcast. So we are coming back for season 5. We're kicking off with LaShasta Bell, who I am also excited about. She is a sleep and mental health wellness coach. So everyone needs a sleep coach. It's a real thing. And we are actually launching a retreat called From Hustle to Harmony, The Beauty of an Optimal Life. And we're going to Costa Rica, June 21st through the 26th. We're taking women with us and we're talking about sleep, wellness, and purposeful alignment in business. So that's coming up in the podcast. I'm doing a big partnership with the Whitney Museum. That's next on the podcast. And then I also have my new company with Leslie Roberson called Lemmy Nicole Beauty. And you'll appreciate this. We talked to so many founders about what do we need? How can we help you right now? And it was understanding retail, of course, with everything that's happening. And so we went and we got our airport certification. Took us 9 months, but we are certified in airports. We purchased vending machines that we are branding. We are bringing them into airports. We'll be at the Airport National Convention Conference as a beauty supplier. We've also put together a partnership with Hyatt Hotels. So we'll be at Hyatt during Essence coming up. And we're also going onto 5 college campuses that we are going to reveal with our vending machines. And we have a big partnership with Amazon. So I am literally listening to people, coupling it with my passion and saying, if we can help you figure out new retail spaces to help your brand grow and survive, let's do it. If through the podcast and conversations with other executives and founders, it sparks an idea, it gives you energy, it inspires you, listen to Business of the Beat. And I'm so excited. And join us on our retreat.
That's incredible. And I can tell you skincare in an airport is critical. So I think it's brilliant.
Yes. All lots of TSA. I'm like, no more. Well,
Kendra, I am so grateful for you. You're just a breath of fresh air. And I have really enjoyed my time with you, chatting with you, and looking forward to seeing you at the Women in Aesthetics Leadership Conference at Terranea Resort, which is stunning, in San Diego, October 3rd through the 5th. And you'll be sharing about kind of building your brain trust. So if you're interested in learning more about Walk, please check out experiencewalk.com to learn more. And Kendra, I'm just so grateful for you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I cannot wait to hug you up.
I know.
Walk. It's going to be amazing. My session is on Saturday at 2:00, Building Your Brain Trust. And I will also have copies of my book, The Beauty of Success, Start, Grow, and Accelerate Your Brand. So it's going to be a fantastic time. I can't wait to see you in October. Thank you for having me.
Going to be wonderful. Thank you, Kendra.
Refresh your body, mind, and career journey at the Women in Aesthetics Leadership Conference, being held October 3rd through the 5th at California's beautiful Terranea Resort. Walk is more than just another convention. It's an immersive retreat that combines education and networking with rejuvenation. For women aesthetic professionals who dedicate their time to the health and happiness of others, this is the opportunity to get away and focus on your own wellness. Reconnect to your passions and return with bold new inspiration for your business. Walk celebrates the med spa industry's opportunities for female empowerment and entrepreneurship, including the ceremony for the 2025 Distinguished Women Awards. Find out more and register at experiencewalk.com. That's experiencewalc.com. And as a Medical Spa Insider listener, you can receive 10% off your registration if you use the promo code WALC10. That's WALC 10.
Promo code valid for inclusive registration until September 11, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or standard registration until October 3rd, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Promo code only applies to the primary registrant and cannot be combined with any additional offers. Thank you to producers Madeline Mahler, marketing content coordinator who organizes, schedules, and handles our guests, provides topics, talking points, and guest bios to our hosts. And myself, Joe DeGuzman, technology operations assistant manager. I handle the audio and video editing, voiceovers, and tech. Kate Harper, senior digital marketing coordinator who makes all of our graphics and manages the podcast platform. Esme Uriostegui, senior social media coordinator who makes and posts all the clips of the podcast to our social feeds. Our music is by Ghost Score. Thank you for listening to or watching the Medical Spa Insider podcast. Please follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future episodes. For more information about the American Med Spa Association, please check our show notes or in the description below.